So I think this part is, yes, more open. I have a few slides to help facilitate the discussion, but the idea is really to explain you that, well, ejabberd is a scalable tool. You can, it's a versatile tool. You can write plugins, you can write module, and as even Christophe has shown you, you can customize the behavior of the pub-sub, for example, which is the use part, very, very deeply. And the thing is that to be able to do good stuff with that, you need to be very familiar with what is XMPP, how does it work, what protocol should I select. So you really, sometimes I see customers that are learning XMPP by looking at the library level only. So they take iOS library and they try to use the method call for the library, from the library, but this is not enough because this is already an abstraction made by the library developer on top of the XMPP protocol. So if you want to really understand what is XMPP, you need to play with XMPP at the XMPP level. So you need to look at the XMPP packets that are being sent and received by the protocol. So this is really important. You need to learn about ejabberd architecture, ejabberd API, and you need to design your solution. It's not, if you want to scale, I'm often asked, does ejabberd scale? And it does not mean anything. It means that it's like saying, is your engine fast? Well, yes, but you don't have kind of a generic engine. You have an engine that is good for your motorcycle, or you have an engine which is good for your airplane, but there is no universal response to that. And the thing is that we're lucky enough so that we can make ejabberd good for a motorcycle or an airplane, but you need to adapt it and you need to fit it into the system you're trying to build. So you need to work on your solution design because you can cope with a very large scope and very large set of problems with it. So you need to take control of your messaging platform and really manage it and design it. And the thing to understand is that in an ideal world, each XMPP should be stateless. Basically, you send message, you route them, you deliver them, and that's it. But that's an ideal world, and in a real world, you need to have states. You need to know who are your users to authenticate them. You need to have message archive. You need to have a lot of things that are stateful by design. So what we try to do is when we design an XMPP platform, we try to be as stateless as possible. Trying to say, okay, and especially with Docker, we talked about Docker previously. Docker is nice if you can make the platform which run inside Docker totally stateless and dependent on other components that are run somewhere else. So your database, your directory or anything, or even HTTP backend that are called and leverage using HTTP calls. So my advice is that try to be as stateless as possible so that you can add more nodes easily, you can remove node more easily, you can recreate your platform from scratch in case of disaster. This is really, if you manage to have a stateless platform, this is really much easier to manage. And to do that, to manage this, to have a stateless ejabberd, you need backends and to delegate the state to those backends. So basically, that's a backend that just plugins using ejabberd API that will be handling the data part. So that can be reading from the backend, writing to that backend, and if you stop ejabberd and restart it, you're in the same state, nothing loose, nothing left. You kill the server, you start a new one, and you deploy an ejabberd from scratch. You put your configuration, and you should be in a good state. So basically, that's the idea. And ejabberd is designed with that in mind. So you have the feature module and the feature are relying on data module. By default, you can deploy with internal storage, which is Nesia, and so on, which is internal, but you can plug those modules to other backend, like use a REST API for your contact, use a REST API for authentication, put your message archive in RIAC, or put your profile vcard in SQL. So, and you can mix the backend depending on your needs. So for example, if you're planning to have a very huge message archive, it may be relevant to use RIAC for that, because you have kind of somewhat infinitely scalable database. You can add more node and to have more storage. So it may be interesting to do that if you, but if you're after only performance for example, for contact or roster, then MySQL database maybe probably is a faster SQL engine you can find. RIAC would be slower for that use case. RIAC is for the case where you cannot fit all your data into a single server. If you can fit your data into a single server, you can use MySQL, or if performance matter, you could use MySQL and do some charting on top of MySQL, for example. So basically, you have the building brick to build the system that fits your needs. You can play with that and design it incrementally and say, okay, well, I won't put that here and there. So we have a lot of backend available. I won't go through it, but you have a relational database, NoSQL database, Active Directory, or LDAP, or so you have a lot of backend, and you even have HTTP backends that you can use for authentication, for example. So that's very, very handy. It's and it doesn't have to be. We design backend in a way that even it has a bit more latency than having the authentication stored internally. Really, it doesn't matter that much in real life. So your authentication might be 200 milliseconds longer than usual, but compared to all the round trips that are needed by an XMPP session to be set up, that's really something that can be neglected. So that you don't have to be afraid about latency. You need to really to focus on architectures. And really, I already mentioned that, but the property is that this is building bricks, backend are building brick for your system. So depending on speed or massive amount of data, you can select one or another. And they are API based, so you can write your own. So sometimes people say, I want to store that data into MongoDB. Do you have that? No, we don't have that. But writing an authentication module for ejabberd on top of MongoDB, you have 3 API call to implement. So this is really something, you take ejabberd API, you implement 3 API call, and you have an authentication against MongoDB. If you don't want to write Erlang, you write a REST API on top of MongoDB in your favorite language, and you eat that with ejabberd, and you're done. So this is really not a big deal. And selecting the right backend, I see often we have something in ejabberd which is external authentication, which is a very basic module to do external authentication using port protocol, but some people use that because it's often easier than to learn ejabberd API or than to learn how other backend like HTTP backend works. But honestly, it's just not just as scalable as writing your own custom backend or using an HTTP backend from the beginning. So yes, you should really don't be afraid. You should not be afraid and write your own stuff without worrying. And as stateful versus stateless, I have 2 diagrams to show. The first diagram is, for example, I'm taking the ejabberd software as a service platform as an example. So this is an example of the stateful approach. And in this stateful approach, our platform is the core of the service. So the user are here, everything is here, maybe sometimes duplicated from the customer backend. And what is the customer backend doing is that it's remotely managing the user base, remotely managing the contact list, doing API calls to create the user, delete the users, change the password. This is not manageable on the long term. If you have two sources of data, you will be diverging at some point. So, and here you have a lot of states. So if you kill that platform, you have to make sure that you restore the database here to be able to rebuild the whole platform. So this is what I call the stateful mode. ejabberd has most of the data to make the system run. And here you have a ejabberd SaaS database, and you see that you can have message archive or a privacy list or pub/sub node. And what we're trying to do is trying to enable some module to run on a customer backend. So the reverse is the stateless mode. So we're not there yet. We're not fully stateless yet, but this is the goal. The goal is to have all the data on the customer backend serving, having an HTTP layer there, and replying to user call, to user authentication call. So when someone want to authenticate to ejabberd, we don't have any user base at all. We're just asking the backend, is that user authorized? Can he connect? And that backend reply with on the REST endpoint with a yes, that user can connect, and then you're in. You're logged in, and you have only one call when the session starts. So when the session is established, ejabberd is a stateful protocol. So XMPP is a stateful protocol. So when the session is started, you know that the user is known for all the duration of the session. So it doesn't generate a lot of traffic. Some customers are afraid. We will need to scale that to a large volume and so on. But this is easy to scale. This is really easy to scale. You can share your database, have multiple HTTP front end. You can. There's a lot of stuff you can do to scale easily. This part is not easy to scale because you have some kind of session pool and synchronization where if you want to talk to a user on a given node, you need to know where that user is. So you need some kind of replication at the state of at the cluster level, and this is what makes XMPP very difficult and needs skills to make it scale. So that part should be quite easy to scale. And for now, you can have roster calls. So when the user asks for the contact list, we call the backend, what is my contact list? And we simply send it back. And we don't even care what's in that. We assume that all users are valid and so on. But we trust the customer backend for that. And we can also, some people say, okay, when I use ejabberd SaaS, what can I do with my data? Can I export them and so on? In that case, we can archive the message on the back end of the customer. So, well, yes, we could export some of the data here, but as we move to a more and more stateless state, you don't even need to export. You can, if you want to leave the platform, you just have all the data and you can create something else there, put your system and replace totally that system. So you keep the control of the platform. So what we want to reach is a state where all the data here will be able to be managed here, and what we do is we make sure the whole thing scale well, but is in a stateless way. one thing also, when you say, okay, does ejabberd scale? Some people forget that, yes, ejabberd scales, but it's only a part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the client. And you can really write a very bad client that is taking twice or maybe sometimes 10 times the resource needed by a good client to perform the same task. And so it means that in ejabberd SaaS, we're trying to promote a way to have a good behavior from the client, is that you're paying for by jobs, which is the traffic you're generating. So this is a very good incentive to promote customers writing good clients. If they know what they do and use the resources that are available wisely, they can reach for the same price a much larger user base than customers writing a bad client and just putting that together. So the thing to remember is that the mobile clients are powerful. You can do a lot of stuff on them. The new mobile device are more powerful than your laptop a few years back. So this is something you can leverage. But you have mobile limitation you have to take into account. So as the client can take a part of the server job, the server also has to take a part of the client job, because with push notification that are required by Apple and now Google, you have in some way to maintain a session for a while on the server and to act as a proxy to the client to be able to send push notification. So in some way also the server has to do part of the job of the client. And yes, you have a lot of good practice for writing good clients like exponential backoff, long-running session on the server. For example, we have some customers using XMPP ping to make sure the connection is established, and they send a lot of XMPP pings to keep it alive and make sure that the client will be disconnected if the connection is lost, the network, you go into a area where there is no network, so it will be detected fast by the server. It's nice to detect connection loss very fast, but it's not the right tool to use. You should not use XMPP ping. This is an XMPP packet that is sent to the server, passed by the server, and the server serialize a reply and send it back. So this is a huge chunk of XML that need to be passed back and forth. And if you have 1 million clients connected, I think you cannot imagine the amount of CPU you will be losing just doing that with a million clients, especially if you do that every 30 seconds. So this is really something you don't want to do. And we have much better stuff in our ejabberd SaaS platform and business edition, is that you have lightweight keep alive. It means that we're doing the keep alive not with XML, we're doing keep alive with white spaces. So you send a white spaces, it's ignored by the XMPP parser, but it's just resetting the timeout. So it's just making sure that, okay, I know that the client is alive. And we have even better, we can do the keep alive, we can do a round trip keep alive. So if you send a space to the server will apply with a space. So it means that the client can know by receiving a space in traffic coming from the socket that he is still connected. So he doesn't have to reestablish a connection because he misinterpreted some of the way that he was connected or not. So this is very lightweight. It could be ignored. This is neutral. The spaces between standard, XMPP standard is totally neutral at the protocol level. So this is something you can use and that will have a tremendous effect on the load of the platform. So on the idea of stateful versus stateless, as I meant, the XMPP session, because the server has to do stuff for the client on the client behalf, the XMPP station becomes stateful, and we we are now not anymore, so in the XMPP standard, you need to have a TCP connection to have a XMPP session. In our model, you can have a session running for a while until a timeout without the need for a TCP connection. So if the client lost the TCP connection or is not online anymore or decided to shut it down because it was suspended by the operating system, mobile operating system, the session is still there in ejabberd for a while. So it means that we're keeping state, we're doing some housekeeping for on behalf of the client. We're caching stuff that the client will receive when he will reattach to the session. So this is very interesting because, for example, if you have received many presents from your contact, it will remove the duplicate and discard the presents that are not relevant anymore. Because if I receive a new present from you, only the last one is relevant. You can discard the previous one. So we will be optimizing the caching and the traffic on that level. So this is very interesting. And also you will be saving for your own user, reattaching to that session is only sending an XMPP packet. You open the TCP connection and you send an XMPP packet and you reattach to that session. It means that you don't have to do consuming stuff like authentication and so on, and consuming on the client, and consuming on the server, and taxing on the bandwidth. So this is something which is very, very interesting. So this is a discussion opener. Basically, you will not be zen with your XMPP platform if you don't know where you want to put the small, nice-looking bush, and you want to do that, put that stone here, and you have to decide where you want to put your things, and you will be enjoying the Zen garden of XMPP. Otherwise, it can be messy and more difficult to manage. So that's the discussion opener. Now I will be very happy to answer your architecture question and to help with them if you have some.